Hey, and welcome everybody to the Deconstructor of Fun podcast. This is a deep dive on Squad Busters, the game we've been busting our ass playing. That joke right from the beginning. We got two people doing the deep dive with myself. We got Phillip Black, game economist at Game Economist Consulting, also a solopreneur.
Living the solopreneur lifestyle.
Living.
Inspired by Michail. I'm doing what I can.
All right.
Trying to be brutally honest.
We all are in this economy.
God, so many puns. Yes. Matt Emery, first time on Deconstructor of Fun podcast. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
In the beginning of the podcast, we also realized that you are a solopreneur. You tried to avoid it, saying you have contractors, and we're like, no FTEs? That's a solopreneur. So Matt, what do you do as a solopreneur?
So Turbine Games Consulting is a crew of 8. We're senior to exec level PMs. Yes, all contractors, analysts, econ designers. Our specialty is helping game teams grow product LTV by 20 to 200% in 4 to 6 months.
Awesome. So you must have seen a lot of products.
Yes.
He's famous for testing app icons. This was like a nugget he dropped. He dropped on the Joseph Kim podcast.
I don't know and I've
where
taken
you got
it
this
everywhere.
Idea, Phil. This to me is like your best finding, that you should use 3 variants for your app icon per month. Just sign up for it. You're going to get gains. That's how I've looked at it.
Oh, it's
okay,
table stakes,
we're
right?
digressing.
Yeah.
So I'm Michail Katkoff, Deconstructor of Fun, solopreneur. that's what we all are. So question number 1, before we start going ahead, what do you guys think? Will Squad Busters be the 6th billion-dollar franchise for Supercell? I mean, clearly Supercell thinks so because they're launching this globally. So Phil, who wrote Massive Deconstruction that you have probably read, if not, you will be reading. Phil, you go first. Is this a billion-dollar franchise?
I think it will become one. I do not think it is one right now. I think it will become one. I think they have all the pieces lined up. My biggest issue is the soft launch period. I don't understand it, but I would say that's far outweighed by the game's like numerous wins, numerous innovations, like return to form. This to me is like the ratifying vote in this next chapter strategy. I want to know how they're going to scale. Like, I want to know how this team is going to approach all those other problems. I would say in reviewing this, it's also clear to me like how important this game is to Supercell. Like, this game can give Supercell its record revenue year. It doesn't even need to perform that well. Maybe 250 million. That's on par with Brawl Stars. I think this game can do 250 million. I think this game can give Supercell like its highest annual revenue on record. I just love to see a late game form.
I would love to see, I mean, we will all see it, but I want to see Ilka's annual blog post when they hit the record revenues. I mean, how many gifts are there going to be? Like, you can use a lot. So, Matt, what do you think? Is this a billion-dollar franchise?
So I have a slightly longer answer. So I'll do some back of the napkin math based on very limited data. I was looking into what it takes for a game to reach $1 billion. We can use Brawl Stars as a benchmark for what it takes to become $1 billion game. Brawl Stars did that in 3 years. In theory, a new Supercell game, if it had the same install trajectory, same retention profile, same art DAO profile, would reach $1 billion in 3 years. But if one of those 3 metrics was, say, like half of what Brawl Stars had, say it had the same art DAO, same retention, but the install volume was half. If one of those metrics was, say, half what it is for Brawl Stars, then it should take 6 years to reach $1 billion, right? The thing is, Brawl Stars' install trajectory was absolutely insane. According to AppMagic, it's in the top 60 most downloaded games of all time, which I had not quite processed before. And according to Sensor Tower, its first year install trajectory was better than, what we consider massively broad market games, like most hyper casual games, better than Candy Crush, better than Subway Surfers. This kind of blew me away. So Brawl Stars, in terms of like market penetration, again, from the data I'm looking at, is just absurd. So that's a pretty high bar. Even if we think that Squad Busters is more broadly appealing than Brawl Stars, it's hard for me to bet on any game, in the current market matching that kind of install trajectory, just given how crazy it is. Second concern is retention. Again, according to Sensor Tower, and these are, as we all know, Sensor Tower estimates, all 4 of Supercell's worldwide launch games had D30s of at least 20%. Brawl Stars was at 24%, according to Sensor Tower. Currently, Squad Busters is showing at 10% D30. Now, this estimate is based
How do we
on.
even know that though? We don't even have D30 data. Who are these people?
I'm assuming this is based on the prior beta from a year before. I have to imagine so because they're just hitting D30 today on the new build.
Be a good Bayesian. How much do you weight that?
Not very high. I'm hoping that we'll get some insider intel on what the number actually is, because that would absolutely change my assessment. But all I have to go on so far is this number that says 10%, which again, I would love to see that poorly supported data show a higher number. So, retention is a question. I'd love to see real numbers that change that. Third, that, like you said, Phil, they only entered soft launch, exactly like 30 days ago. So they're only seeing their first D30s on the new build today. So they are operating from somewhat limited information to some degree. And so there's some obvious question marks there as far as the long-term retention potential for the game. Third concern is, let's say the trajectory to $1 billion is 6 years, to $1 billion instead of 3, like Brawl Stars. Can this gameplay and platform retain a thriving core community of engaged players, content creators, and influencers for the first 6 years? If anyone can do it, Supercell can, but that's not proven yet. And I know people have concerns about the scalability of this core gameplay, which I'm sure we'll get to. So based on these inputs, it's absolutely possible this game could reach $1 billion in 3, 6, 7 years, based on the very limited data we have now. But if I were forced today to bet on it, I would take the under on this.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what's the under on what bench?
Based on Sensor Tower data? I mean, we love Sensor Tower, but that's the first.
Well, give me the real numbers.
Data.
Give me the real numbers. I would love to see something, because all I have is what I can see, and
250 million this year. Would you take the under on 250 million this year?
Not necessarily.
I'll give you 2-1 odds.
Are we placing bets? What if he wins? Does Phil get half of your contractors? What's the bet on?
We'll get this in writing, Phil. I think the game will do quite well. I just think it's very risky to bet on it being $1 billion franchise at this point.
So hold up. So let's talk about accessibility for just a moment. And I'm interested, Mishka, on your viewpoint on this. What do you make of the pre-registrations? The 40 million pre-registrations already. Interesting IP. Tell me about the metaverse, baby. I guarantee every PR person in Supercell's got that in their holster. But penetration, there it is. What more do you need? I mean, that's a lot of downloads out of the gate. That to me is some pretty heavy penetration. That to me gets you 250 million easy on that.
And consider the launch. So let's talk a little bit about the because this affects a lot of the revenue that we're going to be seeing. The fast soft launch period, hardly a month in, they're going global, and they're going with the what I'm hearing in the streets of Helsinki. This is going to be the biggest launch of a Supercell game ever.
Wow!
And it's not like they don't have the war chest, the ammunition to carpet bomb the market for everybody and their mother to download this game. So we can expect 150 million installs, right? In next few months.
That seems completely reasonable to me. I don't have the benchmarks against the other titles, but I would bet on historic download volume for a game like this. I think this game just screams accessibility from the top to the bottom. And one of Supercell's secret weapons has been IP building. I don't think they've gotten enough credit for that. They're out there selling toys. They're out there hawking toys. They're experimenting in transmedia stuff. They've set aside a big chunk of cheese for
huge chunk of cheese,
huge chunk of cheese for getting this brand wheel going, and it's real IP. It's coming together. It's fun to see all the games come together. The other thing I just want to note here is that none of the games from Supercell's failed titles have made an appearance in Squad Busters, and I just think about Bill Belichick, the head coach of the Patriots. He doesn't hang losses on the company office, and as much as they love celebrating dead games, it's interesting to me that they aren't willing to pop the champagne in this way. You need to make it to launch to get onto the Wall of Fame.
I would like to see Gunshine characters, maybe a little bit from Battle, but Gunshine would be fun. Let's just bring in the old school, the ultimate, the big fail that caused the big pivot to what Supercell is today. That would have been pretty fun.
I could not agree more.
Yeah. Matt, what do you think? Let's talk really about the fast soft launch period. Like, why the pressure? Why are they not cooking it? Why are they coming out like barely having D30 numbers?
Oh, I mean, it's pure speculation on my part. I could only guess. My hope is that they're seeing retention numbers much, much better than that tiny slice I saw from Sensor Tower, and then they're very, very confident. That would make me happy. I mean, again, I love the game personally. It's just a question of the market and the numbers. I mean, you guys are thinking 150 million installs within months?
Yeah.
I don't want to sign up for 150 million. I think for those 50 million pre-registrations will convert better than Warzone for sure, because I think it's more flexible device requirements. Like that really killed Warzone. I think it could do Call of Duty mobile numbers for sure in terms of conversion rates for the pre-registrations.
Call of Duty did like 100 million first month installs.
We could check the historicals on that one. If that is true, I would sign up for that same. I would sign up for a similar trajectory.
So Call of Duty numbers.
Yeah.
Matt, you mentioned the point is like they're just seeing such a great numbers that they're basically foregoing soft launch and just tech launching this. But to my understanding, listen, how can they see these numbers that are so great in terms of retention? Because when they came into the soft launch, the decision to launch had already been made, to my understanding. So
is that right?
If you have big launch coming in 1 month after you release this game, that means the plans to launch on that date, all the marketing that they've set up had been already done 6 months prior, at least. So
that was
they
going to
knew
be my question,
they're coming out.
Whether that was all premeditated.
Yeah. And so you have to kind of go back and understand, like, okay, so how are they so confident? It must be that, first of all, well, we know we played this game a ton. This game is like crack on steroids. They must have internal focus groups or kind of some kind of an internal audience, maybe streamers, maybe some kind of a power users that they've been testing. And all the numbers from internal testing have been so convincing. And the company has such a big cojones that they're like, we're not even going to test it with the real market. We're just going to launch it. So
Peak did this recently. Remember, we covered this on Twig a little bit. We covered this with, I believe it was Match Factory, and that's been an enormous success for them. They just like gun ho. I don't get if this is a new strategy. Like, what is like the whole point of mobile was that you're able to soft launch a game, get its KPIs in a good place. They're predictive of global. Launch it in global. Don't burn your marketing budget. Cancel the project if it doesn't get there. That's a Scopely playbook. Scopely developed that playbook.
But can I throw in a theory? So something that I've been seeing with some of the titles that have not been able to scale in various genres, let's say casual. These games came out. The early metrics were really good. They were hitting that golden cohort, and then the golden cohort was starting to run dry. And what the company would do is in terms of soft launch, as we always know what they should be doing, so they would cut the spending. They would focus on product improvements. There's always tons of optimization that we could do. Matt's consulting company and 8 contractors can help with that. And then the goal was to improve the KPIs so that they can then increase the UA. But what I've been seeing, and I don't know if this is, I posted actually about this on LinkedIn, but what I've been seeing is companies ending up in a sort of a death loop. So because of the limited channels, at least in certain puzzle genres, when you're decreasing your marketing budgets, you're significantly decreasing at the moment the quality of your audience. And so all of your metrics are going down. And so despite doing your product improvements, the overall quality of the audience is decreasing so heavily that all the metrics are going down. And so you enter in the death loop where you cut down on spending, your KPIs go down despite work on the product, and then you end up cutting a little bit more from spending because you're focusing on the product improvements. And then there are some games I'm not going to name that are in this death spiral, and you can see it clearly going this way in data AI or sensor tower graphs. Does this theory make sense? So to counter this one would be to just go full hog, just everything in.
It doesn't make sense at all because it's not at the margin. There should be diminishing returns. So if I'm removing units, then the only way I think you would win on this is some sort of K-factor argument, right? This is brand marketing logic. It's recommendations. It's
the amount of channels in UA has decreased significantly, and the dominance of, for example, AppLovin as a channel for many genres is so it's so significant. It's almost like 70% or more of your audience is coming through AppLovin. And so if you remove that channel or decrease your bet on that channel, you're getting significantly worse audience for your game, and that tanks your KPIs. So the sort of strategy of like, let's press the brakes is not optimal. And the more optimal strategy based on this assumption would be to just hit it out the park. Whenever you feel confident, just go full in.
I'm not there yet. This
No.
predicts bigger budgets, bigger swings, and I'm not so sure if we've had that yet. Like, how much did Arc Rumble spend? You know, that's a game that I was looking at today that hasn't gone anywhere, that we had like really high prospects for, download volume, miss, strikeout.
Yeah.
Toy Match, I think, is interesting. I want to get inside the heads of these marketers and where their headspace is at. To be honest with you, I like my Tencent theory. Like, that to me is why you get this game out there. It's Tencent tapping on the shoulder of Ilka, being like, hey, look at our money, our investment has not increased. If you look at their revenue, it has not increased since Tencent purchased it in 2016. Their annual revenue has declined when you compare it to 2023. It's basically the downward slope in the entire period. They've had some uplifts when they launched Brawl Stars. Honestly, like, the biggest surprise in the Supercell portfolio right now is Clash Royale. That is honestly the story. The story of the company is that Clash Royale has been in the stinker for a while. If you remember, they were doing an external hire a really long time ago, which was rare for them. That game has been really in the stinker, and Brawl Stars has been over satisfying its need. But its revenue is down. So like, if I'm Tencent, look, I'm not doing that well. This thing isn't moving. It's not making more money. Supercell, get this thing out the door and make us some more money this quarter.
That's a very interesting hypothesis. But then if you consider Tencent and if you consider the founder CEO of Supercell, there must be a reason why he's still at the helm of the company. And if you'd have a boss that is tapping you on the shoulder and telling you to do a bunch of things, he's in such a position of his life that he doesn't have to listen to. He doesn't need to be tapped by anybody. And if he's happy where he's at, I bet nobody's tapping him on the shoulder. And Tencent doesn't have that type of a history. Even if you interact with people from Tencent, from their central teams, they provide you all sorts of support and more. Like, the amount of support you can get, the amount of insight you can get is infinite. But it's up to the studios to take advantage of that. That's the way I've understood Tencent is working.
Completely fair. What do you make of Supercell's top design chief, the one that previously worked on Clash of Clans? Yes. What do you make of him, who was also in the announcement video with Ilka for the game? What do you make of him updating his LinkedIn page to being the Squad Busters lead?
I don't know. I don't know.
You put your top chief on the game? That's very interesting to me. You know, your top lieutenant, I need this to work. Can you go execute against this? Deliver.
I know some people who are on the team, and I know that they chose to be on the team and they wanted to work on this. Like, let's be honest, like, if you were Phil working in some central function at Supercell, head of product, or you name it, whatever titles they have, and you see this game going gangbusters, it's so much fun, it's so interesting, wouldn't you jump on it? Why would you be, consulting on the side?
I would. And this consumables model is banging. We're going to be talking about this. This thing is banging. Like, his fingerprints. I wish he would give more public conversation, but like, he gave a GDC talk, which is amazing. I wish he gave more regular public appearances. It'd be cool to talk to him about this. Let's see him at GDC. Brawl Stars went last. It'd be great if he went next on kind of this game and its evolution and like its genre influences, just like Ben Bro did for Marvel Snap.
I think he'll be busy for Maybe. Actually, no. It's going to be he has enough time to get this on a growth track and put it in place. But yeah, GDC is far enough. He will have time to talk about the launch.
Fingers crossed.
Elevate your game development with Heroic Labs, the cutting-edge platform for building multiplayer games. And you need an edge to be successful in today's gaming landscape. Their scalable Nakama server empowers you to create compelling, real-time multiplayer experiences effortlessly. Benefit from features like in-game chat, leaderboards, matchmaking, and more, all designed to enhance engagement and retention. Whether you're developing for mobile, console, or PC, Heroic Labs gives you the tools to bring your community together. Unleash the full potential of your game with Heroic Labs, where every developer is a hero.
This podcast is brought to you by Data AI. Now, you're asking, didn't they get acquired by Sensor Tower? They did, and that's awesome. Here's why. Whether you loved using Data.ai or Sensor Tower, the combined company will offer customers even stronger and more detailed insights on the full digital customer journey. Exciting times lie ahead as Sensor Tower and Data AI join forces. Go to Data.ai or SensorTower.com and get on board with undeniably the best data partner in the business. Now, back to the episode. But let's talk about the basics. So Phil, you wanna show us the gameplay? God damn it! When you show this gameplay, I want to start playing it. Like this is one of the,
it is correct.
like in my entertainment funnel, like this has gone so much higher up. Like it's not, I'm not killing myself by watching the news, reading about interest rates or any of that. Like this goes number one. This is like ahead of Instagram for me at this moment, like in my entertainment funnel. First, open chest, then look at Instagram.
So let's talk about the core gameplay, and we'll kind of like work our way outward, almost like a jawbreaker. This is me right now, by the way. Where if you're watching the video online, I've got the Squad Buster screen in front of me. I'm level 24. I'm in Beach World, obviously. I'm a hardcore player. I've spent money. So let's go and start a match. The thing that you'll find that's really interesting to start with is that when you click play, the next thing you'll see is a selection of characters, and these are the characters that you have a chance of opening once you're in the game. And each row is a rarity. So if you look at the top row, you'll see that all of the characters that are selected are common. Then you see another row that's rare. Although I want to say that's the wrong color for rare, Supercell. You got this one wrong. Yellow, orange is legendary.
That is a great point.
And blue, normally common is gray. Or you could do uncommon and you can make it green. That's a separate topic. Okay. But each row is a rarity, and those rarities are going to correspond generally to phases of the game. That's generally when you have a higher probability of unlocking them. You can unlock them earlier. And there are sub-selection of the characters that are available to you at that point in the game. So it's also possible that you could have a probability of opening a character that you haven't unlocked yet. So you have this really strong incentive to go out there and make sure you collect all of the characters. And so no matter what you do, when you click this play button, you're going to get a new sub-selection. And it's a large portion of your roster, but you're not building a deck. Your deck is, you could almost say, randomly chosen for you as you enter a match. The other thing you'll see here is in the lower left-hand corner, it's this cute little bag icon. The 2D art for this game is adorable, by the way. And it's called a battle bag. And inside it is 4 consumables. And this is like one of the marquee items in Squad Busters, one of the marquee kind of progression economy institutions. It is these 4 consumables. So one of them is a reroll. When you go and you open chests, you're going to selection of 3 characters. This lets you reroll those 3 characters. There's another thing called a key here, and we're going to talk about this. This is the most pay-to-win element I've ever seen in a game. I'm very interested to see what you guys think about how pay-to-win these keys are, and they're of different types, so you can get a different ability based on the key that you use. So we're going to go in, we're going to hit play here. It's going to use a chess ticket. It's going back to this old, like, almost energy system. You can play as long as you want to, but you need to have a chess ticket consumed for you to be able to earn a chest reward at the end of the round. And you can buy more chests for gold in the game, but this is what you need to be able to get a reward at end of round. So I don't have enough. I played too much. So I'm going to buy some more. It's now going to roll some modifiers. And you'll notice here the matchmaking isn't quite as fast as normal Supercell games, because remember, this is 10 players PvP, although a lot of those are bots.
A lot of them are bots.
A lot of them are bots. This game loves to tell you pick up gems to win. It loves to tell you how accessible it is. Drag to move, stop to attack. This is like a key accessibility moment. I don't know what you guys thought about how this is displayed. There's an action circle. This is another really interesting part of the game. So I had a choice of 3 characters, which was pretty interesting. When I started, I chose this character that's an archer, and I'm immediately faced with these different enemies. So I'm going to go around, I'm going to slay these enemies, I'm going to use my basic attack, and again, I just walk up to them, and then I stop moving. Mm-hmm. They're in my action circle, which is this fixed circle that's around me. I automatically attack, they lose health, and then once they lose health, they drop both gems, gold, and sometimes these PvE currencies that they just introduced in a recent update. And you'll see here, like, it's very early in the game, but I got this epic character. I got Witch, which is one of the characters that was shown to me beforehand as someone I had a probability of getting. I'm going to choose Witch, and once I choose Witch, she also drops an item when she spawns, which is really cool. There's items in the game, so these are things that spawn inside of the map. You can only have 1 at a time. One character lets you have 2 at a time, but generally you can only have 1 of these at a time, and these are just consumables that you can use. There's no element of monetization when you see these in-round consumables. It's only in the keys. And as we continue to progress through the map, we're going to slay more enemies. We're going to get more and more golds. And as we get more and more gold, we get to open these chests. And once you open enough chests and you get 3 of the same characters, they fuse together. And when they fuse together, they get really powerful. In fact, they get more powerful than the sum of their parts. Their DPS increases, their health increases. Sometimes their abilities are upgraded. And the other thing that happens, and this is really core to the game, is that when your 3 characters are fused, your squad size goes down, and squad size is correlated with the price of chests. So if you make your squad size really low, the price of chests is really low, and so you can build up your squad even faster. So you're trying to fuse these characters together, you're trying to build your squad as fast as possible. You're going on this gold price roller coaster. The other thing you'll notice here is that this isn't the win condition. The win condition in this game is actually to collect another currency. So not just gold, but also gems. Gems are how you place yourself on the leaderboard. And if you are in the top 5 in terms of gems by the end of the 4-minute round, I believe, then you preserve your streak. However, if you are in, let's say, first place, you get extra chest taps. And we'll see that at the end of this round, some extra chest taps. But you also see, if you look at my screen now, I just got a mega unit. This is another consumable in the economy.
You got super lucky, by the way.
Yeah, I know, right? So what will happen generally when it comes to combat is that you're going to have your squad, you're going to have the collection of fused and unfused characters, and you stop and you just hover over another player, and combat is going to commence. And so what's really challenging about this game that I think a bunch of people have picked up on is just how hectic the screen is. So if you're looking at what's happening right now, there's gems that are exploding on the screen. Everyone's running around. There's PvE elements. There's just a bunch of things that are happening all at once. It's really hard to get a read of the meta in round and how to react. So it may be the case that I want a certain type of character to counter my opponent, but with all of this just smush, it's hard to know what characters I should use, what characters they're using. So I can build a particular squad that might be able to defeat them. And it's also just hard to know how the battle is going. So like you're going to start to slowly lose characters and they're going to start to lose their characters. And so you got to make a decision on whether or not you want to retreat. And when you retreat, you use this turbo button to run really, really quickly, but you only have a limited amount of it. So it recharges. So you kind of have these like stop go chases, which I found to be annoying.
Yeah. And Phil, by the way, like the whole retreat is de-incentivized, in my opinion, because you get a lot of damage when you try to retreat because your retreat speed is the same speed as somebody can chase you. But when you're moving away, you're not shooting. So the other one who's chasing you quite often just chases you down and murders everybody, or at least causes way more damage at a retreating player.
The other thing that happens there is when you turn away from another player, your tanks move to your front. Your glass cannons are in the back, so they get picked off. It's pretty interesting how they did that.
Yeah. It's almost designed in a way that when you go into a battle, you either win or you get out. But even if, like, I've gotten out so many times with like 1 or 2 characters, and then by the time you had that engagement, you're essentially done. Like you can still get to 5th or whatever, but you're going to be last in line because essentially if nobody's eliminated, then you're going to be last. So, but it's based on how many players are eliminated. So what I'm trying to say is, it's almost like one encounter that was going to determine it. You can't really come back from that one battle.
I don't know if that's
yeah,
I would agree. If you commit, I've found some escapes that are possible. I think it needs to be more viable strategy from a character perspective. Like this is one of the things I talk about in the Deconstructor Fun piece, is that I think the character design feels very muted here. And when I think about just like the different quadrants of strategy right now, I wish my characters did more to make that a possible. Like you can use Max, who gives you more speed boosts, which would technically make your escape more viable. But I'd love to see more explicit features, more like dashes, something of that nature. Just it feels kind of confined right now.
You mentioned stuff about the fact that the top 5, basically half of the players win.
Yep.
It's actually even more. Now that we're looking at your end screen, 3 of the players got demolished. So it's actually 5 win, 2 of the players who kind of like also ran. And then, half of the players are essentially
3 got
always
busted,
winning.
Not quite. And here's where I think we get into a little bit of the systems design. So we were talking about earlier, like you have these gems, which is this second currency you need to collect in game. It has no impact on the moment-to-moment gameplay. It just places you on the leaderboard. And so if you rank in the top 5, you extend your winning streak. And the reason the winning streak is important is that it gets you extra chest taps. So let's talk a moment about the chest taps, because it's just about to happen here. So I'm at my results screen. If you're looking at this right
tap
now,
it
I've come
out.
in 6th. Let's talk through a little bit. I've come in 6th. So I have not come in the top 5, which means my streak is not going to be extended. So we'll learn all about that. The thing that's interesting is the audio says 6th place, keep it up. It always has this positive reinforcement, which I think Supercell should also fix. Like, no, you should not keep it up. That's a bad result. And so you'll see here.
Yeah, they do that. Good job.
sixth place, and I have this lightning bolt that says +3. And I just want to say, like, this is one of the times I actually think Supercell's animations actually don't do it justice, or some of its UX falls down, is you never see this kind of symbol anywhere. You never see this like energy symbol that gives me extra taps. It feels kind of ethereal. I'd love to see it have more visual impact. And if you look under the sixth, it has this +38 with this kind of octagon symbol. Now, I believe that is portal energy. I don't know what that is. It's supposed to be XP.
I think it's player count XP, but yeah, it's really hard to track down what that actually is.
Is that it? Yeah,
I think so.
See, like that's just yeah, like an animation would be really nice there. So, anyways, let's open this chest.
How many taps?
And so I lost my streak. And the interesting thing that happens is like you get additional taps based on your streak level, and you also get taps based on where you place in the leaderboard. And so the thing that's really interesting is that there is kind of a dullness in the shape of that distribution. So there is not a lot of additional gain to coming in first place versus coming in, let's say, fifth, because the streaks compose so much of the additional taps you get. So there isn't this like bent payoff curve, which I think is another reason you don't see a lot of combat in the end game, is that there isn't a lot of gains to coming in first versus coming in second, because you're not going to get that additional taps. And remember, if you get busted, if you die, you're not going to get a taps. Like your streak is broken. So I think that's another problem. But they have this very interesting, like, keep your streak going. It's very match 3. Can we just pause here and talk about this for a moment? What do you guys think about this like streak prevention gold sync mechanic? Can this be in any PvP game?
I love it. I mean, loss aversion is a fantastic mechanic, and it's deployed in so many games these days to great effect for monetization. I mean, I love the streak mechanic here generally. I love the tap mechanic. I find it to be better than the Brawl Stars implementation because you can upgrade the size and the number of taps, and so it just feels kind of more multi-dimensional. You know, the more taps you get, the exponentially more value you can get from the chest. And so once you learn how it works, I mean, it's fun at baseline, I think, just to do the tapping. Like the core mechanic, like you said, Phil, is just really delightful and addictive. But I find that the way that the streak system, you know, synergizes with that tap system and reinforces it, I think is brilliant.
Yeah, so I spent all my coins in the beginning on this loss aversion just out of, I don't know, just automatically, it made sense. And then I became more coin cautious, and you start kind of calculating these things because the price increases the longer your streak has been. And so it definitely makes sense to spend in the beginning, but it doesn't really make any sense to upkeep your streak other than vanity reasons. That is like 18 wins or so forth. It's just too expensive. And the return on that investment doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the tuning is a little weird.
No, I think that's totally a fair thing to mention. I would agree with that. You know, what is the cost per unit of spend? You know, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like, how does this compare against every other part of the game? It's still super interesting. Let's go ahead and pay it for now. I think this would be, let's go ahead and play this out. And so my streak is preserved. It's at 5. And by the way, they show this on the leaderboard where your streak is. And you don't know how much of it someone has paid and how much someone has not. So I've seen people with like 146 wins in a row. Obviously, they're paying.
It's not real.
So when I initially came across this mechanic, I did not think it was going to work because it's a PvP game. 50% win rate. It's going to be too brutal. We've talked about this with Clash Royale. Too brutal. A lot of reactivations, frustration. I quit. People like to win. This is a reality of PvP games. This uses bots. They boost up win rates. You don't end up spending, you know, on streak saving 50% of the time. But I think that's been another interesting part about mobile games, is just kind of this move to bots, which is very old in console games and is like hasn't really come back, but is coming in mobile, which is interesting. Okay, so we're gonna get it. Let's talk about how this works. You just saw these little icons. These are my taps. Now you're going to get a chest rarity. This is on a chest cycle, very similar to Clash Royale. So you're going to get different rarities based on which chest number that you have. And you'll see that I have these taps down below. And so I'm going to tap once. It just did a little spin. That was actually a roll on the back end. And that roll gave me a probability of a couple things happening. One was that this chest could level up in terms of rarity, which means I might get higher rarity character shards. The other thing that might happen is that I could add more copies to the chest, so I could get more shards at the end. So I'm going to tap it again. We're going to do another spin. I don't think I got anything that time. Oh, bonus spin. This was, I got +1. I got another copy. All right, fuck yeah. And you can see like there's this like fucking lightning around the bonus. I mean, how can you not love this shit? Like, how awesome is this? And the other thing I'll just mention, this is in the update. If you have a rare chest, I believe on the final spin, like a star comes in. Like no one had to add that. No one asked for them to add it. And someone at like midnight just decided to make it more exotic. All right, one more copy here. Big. And then this is another spin. And this thing is just like, it just wants to implode right now.
It's bursting.
It's
bursting out, it
bursting,
seems.
and you can tap this really, really quickly, right? It's almost like
Yeah.
a fidget thing. Like you can whip through these extra taps. All right, boom,
Boom.
there we go, explosion, charge up,
Ugh.
and I got
Oh my
7
God.
copies, and they're only giving away babies right now.
Baby. Heavy.
So do you want to talk about the meta a little bit and the progression?
Yes, yeah. So I would start with, when talking about the meta, I would start probably, since this is a PvP game, I want to talk about the balancing. Like, how do you feel the balancing is when we talk about the mechanics, but especially the characters, abilities, and maps? Like, how would you rate that?
I mean, it's a lot of bots, like you said. I'm very curious the extent to which bots are leveraged once they go big, once they go worldwide. But I mean, from my playing, I found it to be nicely balanced. We could have a separate conversation around PvP in the match and what that feels like, and just that mechanic. But as far as like the balancing of whether I can win or lose, and I feel like the outcome is fair, felt pretty good to me, to be honest.
This key is just like an explosive part of this game, is that you can use these in-round keys. When you use a key, you forgo the gold cost of that chest. You immediately get it, and I can double up, and I can use the gold I would have spent on that chest to get another one in succession from one another. That's an incredible pay-to-win element.
It's insanely powerful.
It's insanely powerful. Yeah. It seems to be surviving. And again, I point to Supercell's top chief designer being on this game. This guy's old school. He knows what brings all the wallets to the yard. It is power. No, it is win probability, which I'm mad respect.
Yeah, is he former CCP economy?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely has been around game economies. When it comes to the characters and how they've been balanced, I don't think they're quite equal in that sense. Like I'm always bummed if I get Greg or the chicken one. Like there are certain characters that are almost punishing, to me at least, when I'm seeing them out of the chest in the beginning, where like at that point know that the whole round is going to be fucked up. Like I'm not going to win. It's going to be avoiding everybody because I got like 2 bad drops in a row, where it's pushing me towards Mavis or Chicken or Greg or all these collector, or the trader character, kind of like these collecting items. Because when it comes to the play style, I found that the optimal play style, at least for me, has been always around either I'm killing a lot of monsters or I'm killing other players. But the sort of a resource hoarder doesn't seem to be the best strategy, especially since the map is getting smaller. So I'm kind of like wondering, and also these resource hoarders are the coins. They're coin generators. So let me go through this and then destroy my hypothesis. But the resource collectors are coin generators, but you don't win based on coins, you win based on gems. So I end up like collecting a ton of coins because I go with this approach of just collecting resources, and then somebody blasts me and I give that person who built a great attack deck just ton of coins so they can become even more powerful. So that's how I'm feeling when it comes to the balancing, that there's too many of these sort of a supportive characters that are around, not supporting your damage dealing or your crew like the medic, but helping you to gather resources. And you get 2 of them on your same team, couple of babies each, you're fucked. That's it. Like you need to use reroll.
So this to me is the secret of this game. This is why I think this game has the greatest ceiling in Supercell's portfolio, besides Clash of Clans, for a lot of reasons, is that it is a structured sandbox. And it supports those type of strategies as you just mentioned, right? Like there's a whole part of this game where it's either, hey, I just want to go out and collect resources. Because what can happen is that you get a character called Mavis, or you get Greg. Greg cuts down trees. Trees give you gold. Mavis picks carrots. Carrots give you gold and gems. And the gem trader trades those gold into gems, and gems place you on the leaderboard. So you can technically win this game without ever engaging in combat. Like that's a path that you can take.
In theory.
I play this strategy.
It works?
Watch the YouTube videos. Greg is regarded as like one of the best characters in the game.
Yes,
generally.
He is. It is really fun to do. You gotta know your maps. There is a way to execute against the strategy. But the point is that it has this type of ability to create these kind of strategies. I'd love to see more organic strategies. I think a lot of them feel very Supercell designed. I'd love to see spontaneous order come out of this, but they have a sandbox. And that's what's so exciting, is that they can pump characters into this game. And because everything's randomized, you are going to have to master the different strategies. you cannot just settle into one strategy, right? Like this is the problem with CCGs, is that you have a given set of cards that you master, and then once you've mastered that deck, it's pretty much over. But you're going to go in with a random set of characters from your inventory, and they can pump more and more characters into that, and you've got to master that. So like I think all these problems are going to be solved.
How about the sort of a like depth and mastery? Like one of the things, I have this love and hate relationship with TFT. The element that they have in their live ops as well as in their character design, and this game has a lot of elements of auto chess genre, but the element that it has is that all these characters have an origin. So basically, like in this game, if it would be a Clash Royale character or just like in a Clash Mini, they like if it's of the same class or type or game, like Boom Beach characters, they get some kind of affinity bonus based on how many you have, and you can build a strategy around that. Like in TFT, there's so many strategies, not only based on classes, but based also on origins, and you're kind of managing that origins and classes building as you go forward. Here, I did not get that feeling. They were quite simplified, which might be, again, the right strategy for incredibly accessibility, but it feels like it caps a little bit of that mastery going forward. What do you guys think?
I mean, Supercell is the king of simplification, right? I mean, I love auto chess personally, but I love how they've simplified that here and sort of combined it with some other genres. What's interesting about the strategy and the strategic depth is that it feels more about matching the mods that you're thrown, which we haven't talked about yet. It's sort of matching your strategy to the map and the mods rather than matching your strategy to the other players and some predefined play style you have or build out that you like. So like Phil said, you're sort of forced to learn how to play as everybody. And then you're forced to learn how to play as everybody and pick the ideal strategy based on whatever mod you're thrown into. The geometry of the strategy is a little different. It's less about learning how to counter other players, less about learning how to, honestly, the ceiling on PvP combat is somewhat low, it feels like. But it seems much more about like playing to the map.
This game has a bunch of depth in its combat and in its moment-to-moment gameplay. And I actually think this is where Supercell is a little bit more junior and is thinking about real-time combat. Like Brawl Stars was its only other really real-time combat kind of Twitch game. And I think the other thing to remember is this is 10 players in a map. There's actually a lot on the back end, and it's a very interesting test for Supercell's engine. But the thing that's really interesting is that I think they're learning about combat readability, and they've struggled a little bit with that here on the UI UX. So like right now we're in a practice match and I have a Hog Rider. And one of the things that's interesting about his ability is that if he goes over grass, he actually gets a speed boost, which is really, really cool. And that's a deeper element of the game. It plays on the map design. It's just like brilliant game design, in my opinion. It's kind of like using what you know. It's not introducing like this other element. So you can see him doing it right here. The problem is that in this really big squad, it's hard for me to know that he's the one who activated this. And so, in these real-time games, I'm not always going to read the menus or the abilities. It needs to make intuitive sense to me. Like that's the beautiful thing, is you just intuitively interact with it and you understand how it works. And UI UX is a big, important component of that readability. And that's where I think that they've struggled a little bit more here, right? So it's hard with so many units. And I've also wondered whether or not 10 players was the right amount of players, if they could have shrunk that to 5. Why does there need to be 10? That was never
just
really
a flex. It's a multiplayer flex. It's like we can simultaneously let 10 players play.
Yep. And the Hog Rider thing is like really nitpicky, but like, so I'm in combat. If you actually hold down the turbo button, which gives you that speed boost, it actually increases your attack speed as well. And they don't change that to a boot to like a sword when I stop. And like, that's a really deep mechanic, right? Like that ends up becoming very important. That's the type of stuff I'd like to see surfaced a little bit more in the game. Like these are the things that Clash Mini spent a lot of time working on, was combat readability. And I think it's tough with so many units, but I think with more time, they definitely would have solved this. Here's another thing that actually dropped in this update that just happened. When you're in combat with another player, it can turn into this mishmash and you don't really know who's winning. They introduces a sound effect. So when a player dies or a character dies, you hear it. And so you can hear the pings and you can see like, oh, wow, I'm ping. It's pinging really quick. I need to get out.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And then it gets louder and louder. It's the same thing when you start killing the units of your opponents. And yeah, it's a really cool sound effect that they just added.
Really cool stuff. It's great that they got this in before launch. I would have loved to see a little bit more of it. Again, like I just don't understand the rush. Like just give. I get like the model here is opportunity cost of revenue. Like you can essentially just do like a discounted net present value equation.
It's not. It's the decision on launching has been made. That's what I think is rushing them. That's all. the decision is being made and you have to execute.
So here's the thing. Where does their team headcount sit? So is this a team that's in 45? Is this 45 headcount? Like, what is this in terms of Supercell's next chapter?
I would say probably around 30.
Okay.
Like if we're just talking about the development team.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, it can be tougher to fix fundamental problems when you have larger headcount size. It's trying to steer a yacht versus a speed ship.
Of course.
30 doesn't actually sound that bad. And to be honest with you, I don't think these issues are that big. These issues are not big.
Yeah, because we know that when Brawl Stars is like really, really growing, we're talking about 50 people, 60 people for a game that is how many years since 2018?
Yep.
And now they've reached like these insane numbers of 60 people. So I would assume that this one is about 30, which is very manageable team.
Yep, I agree. That doesn't sound
like everybody can get into a single room and have a conversation.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
Phil, do you want to talk about combat readability while we're here, or save that for later?
No, I would say that's pretty much all I would have to say about it is that, it's an important part of the game. It's not working well. That sound effect sounded like they're making some improvements. It needs to be better. And I think it will be better.
Let's compare it to a MOBA or an auto chess. Isn't the readability as difficult in those genres as well?
I think it's closer to an RTS. This is where its RTS elements come out because there's just so many units. AI, enemy bots are on screen too.
Mm-hmm.
Gold and gems. Like this is my other big knock is like the dual win condition, or I don't call it dual win condition, the two currencies. This is actually what Monopoly Go had, by the way. This was an early Monopoly Go design, is that you collected cash and that's how you won. Mm-hmm. And then you also rolled around and you used energy, kind of similar to what you might call gold here. I think that's another thing that's really difficult to keep track of here. I'm not exactly sold on that win condition, which is a more fundamental problem.
Yeah, especially since coins, they're in-game coins, and then there's metagame coins.
Yeah.
But those are different.
Yeah.
And it's like coins confusing. On coins. So if you are new to this type of design, like there are these sort of a very, I would say almost like hardcore game economy designs that has multiple different currencies, but it's still under the same names because, it's different. This is meta, this is core. But for players, I would assume that they don't consider it different. Like I collect coins in the match. Like those are the coins that I'm probably taking into the metagame, right? It's like
the gems you do, right? Like the gems from the match do directly go into a gem pass, but the coins don't go into your coin wallet. So it's a little disjointed there. I think Phil had some good points before about combat readability, and I think that's like one of the big problems here is just that in the late game especially, like I can't tell if there are 3 or 4 teams, 5 teams running around the center of the map. Like I don't really have a way to tell who I can fight and who I can't, like who is more powerful than me, who's less powerful than me. It's just these big mobs of characters that I can't read. I can't assess who's in those teams and make decisions about like, oh, they're using mostly Gregs, and so I think I can take that. It's really hard to tell anything except that you have these clouds, like these kind of handicap tumbleweed clouds of of characters running around. And I mean, it makes combat in the end just sort of this kind of jockeying game that it feels like hard to have PvP combat depth given that concession on the design front. And it's, I think, a major limitation of the current core gameplay model here. It just forces you to make most of the strategy and skill around things other than PvP combat, which is interesting. I mean, not a deal breaker, but it's feels like a shortcoming.
The only thing that they choose to visually show is how many gems you've collected till that point.
Right.
Like that is the only kind of like visual communication of your strength. It's like you must be pretty badass because you have X amount of gems, which is just somewhat correlating to your strength in the game.
Yeah, it's fairly weakly correlated, I would say, to your team's strength. I mean, because you could pick up gems without fighting anybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little tricky. But I mean, I understand how they got here. You know, they had to make design decisions to arrive here. It just is a concession that they'll have to deal with.
So jumping in on the sort of a mastery and skill-based progression, what do you guys think? Like, if we start with Phil, like, is there a reasonable skill depth in this game?
I think we need to look at it in the right way when we talk about skill depth. To me, at its core, this is testing a roguelike theory, which is theory crafting. Like, that is what drives roguelikes. That's what drives Vampire Survivors. That's what drives a lot of battle royals. Battle royals are roguelikes. They take so many of those elements. It's that in-round progression combined with the RNG or the randomness of what you can get in those chests, which, as we were talking about, forces you to master all those different strategies. But ultimately, what drives a lot of the content is me thinking about what strategies I could run or should run or interesting to run. This is why, like, I draft in Magic the Gathering so often, is I love getting that random assortment of cards and doing problem solving on like how I solve this particular situation. We shouldn't see just like one meta emerge from this game. It should be dependent on map. It should be dependent on location. Exactly as you were talking about, Matthew. Like that to me is a healthy meta. Is if like these design elements really stand out, that forces me to change how I take in information and like form a strategy. That is content that you get to consume. And I think they just have this like really stable pipeline to make that happen. Just pump more characters into it. So I think like they're going to add more characters. I think the abilities are going to get better. I don't think the abilities are I'm not in love with them as I thought I would be, especially in the first part of the game. I think they need to move some of the second part of the characters backward. Like, for instance, healing from the medic is unlocked in the second world, and having that in your team is actually like pretty game changing in terms of strategy. Like some of the characters could really be yanked backward that I think unlock a lot of strategic depth on how you deal with issues. Like Mavis is another example of a character that would be great to see kind of earlier on, or Trader. Like Trader is what opens up that gold to gem strategy, that really PvE strategy. And that's not really viable, I think, in the first part of the world. But I think they're going to have a ton of mastery here. I think they're going to have a ton of mastery. I think there's more possibility here for mastery than in Brawl Stars.
Yeah, a different kind of mastery, as you said. I mean, if they keep adding features, maps, abilities, you know, that in theory, the foundation is there. They can add tons and tons of layers to it. It's just that some Supercell players expect is there to be more depth in the core, the moment-to-moment PvP combat. And that seems limited here. But, you know, there is plenty of opportunity in the meta to add more mastery options there. And the other thing that you mentioned, Phil, that's worth calling out again is that, you know, the theory crafting is definitely there. But at the same time, you are limited by the selection of characters in each round. So it's not like you can pick a theory and try to test it and refine it match over match. I mean, you're just thrown into you're given a random deck of cards each time, and you have to sort of play what you're given rather than working on developing a particular strategy.
You have some agency in round, but you're still operating in that umbrella.
Yeah. To me, there's the depth is not quite there when comparing again. I'm doing the comparison of like what is the most strategic, and that would be TFT. I'm not saying that this game should be nearly as deep as TFT. Of course, the rounds are much longer, or much longer, depending how you want to play, whether you hyper roll or just play the original classic game mode. But it does seem that the depth at least is quite shallow. Like I almost know how the round's gonna go, but nevertheless, I'm still enjoying it. So I don't know if that's a bad thing. Like I get the sort of okay, this round is fucked. I got a couple of Gregs and a couple of Mavis, and like that's not my crew. I like to attack. I like to kill, and I'm like, well, let's see if I can survive this round. And I'm still playing the next round because they are so rewarding, and that's where the 50% or the if you're in the top 5, it still rewards you with a streak. So it's not punishing when you draw the characters that you don't want to draw. It changes your gameplay. You're doing something different. There are the quests that you're constantly doing. So that's in kind of in the back of your mind, like, okay, let's get some box opens or the blue box breakage, or let's find some loot in the grass or that kind of stuff, or let's kill certain type of monsters that are always the quests that you have going on. So I don't think that this game is very deep. I think it's kind of on the medium level, but I don't think that's an issue either, because there's so many other things going on, because the rounds are so short, and because it is so rewarding and you have that power progression, but it's not an issue. That's how I would put it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I find it to be insanely addictive in the short term. You know, it absolutely has that, you know, just one more round feeling. The question is, you know, can you picture content creators on YouTube still making videos 3-6 years out based on that same core meta? You know, if they add more modes, like, is that addictive core loop still addictive 3 years from now?
Why is that the bar? I don't care about influencers. I don't care about them.
Yeah, exactly.
Make what you want or you don't want.
Well, influencers are great for advertising, and I think this type of a gameplay is pretty cool to be showcased on TikTok. Like, I think it's like the short, I don't know, like everything about this looks like candy.
Yeah, I mean, I say influencers, but I mean like content creators. I'm using that as a proxy for like community engagement and that initial core group of players still being interested, invested in the game, talking about the game, celebrating the new rollouts and the new features. Like, can we still see that happening 3-6 years in the future based on this core gameplay?
Yes.
I'm not saying it can't. Okay. So you're
Definitive,
yes,
yes.
250 million.
I'm not as convinced,
I mean,
but if anyone can figure it out, Supercell can.
Let's talk about meta
Yeah,
monetization,
yeah,
because I thought you'd be in support of this. I think this is like
please,
a lot of bull
please,
cases
please.
emerge from this.
The core loop. Let's talk about that.
Yes. So you're going to go into these matches. You're going to get these chests based on your performances. You're going to spend these tickets, which you've been talking about. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go into your squad selection. You're going to see all of your characters. And then when you have 10 copies of a character, you're able to evolve it. And when you evolve it, the 10 units get converted to a 2-star unit. So you're only getting baby units. Once I get 10 baby units, I convert it to a 2-star, I think they call it classic unit. Then once I get 10 classic units, I convert it to a super unit, and they're just about to launch 4-star, which is going to be ultra, and that is going to require 10 units of the super as well. So they're only giving away babies right now. So you can see that the cost is exponential for each of the characters, how many copies you need. It reminds me of like those old like Chinese counting systems. You've seen like the little discs you keep moving from side to side.
Yeah.
Thing. Yes, thank you.
Like how does it feel to be getting those babies, the base common units, when you're going for the last set, where essentially you need thousands of them? Like,
so there's a lot of velocity that they can play with. So they can give you a lot of taps. They can keep that going. They can give you a lot in different types of progression, because the currency becomes less and less valuable per unit to your progression.
yeah.
So they kind of increase velocity a little bit. I don't know, Matthew, how you felt about it, and you, Mishka, as well.
It's like in any game, because they've made that haptic and that visual feedback so powerful that it always is nice to get a ton of babies. Like, oh, I got 7 taps, you know, so many barbarian babies. This is great. But when you kind of zoom out and really, you know, work your game design brain, I'm like, this makes no difference. Like, this is a drop in the pool where I'm currently at. And that thinking kind of disincentivizes me of paying for the streak, because whether I'm getting 3 or 7 or 8 has no goddamn difference. I need 10,000. So that to me felt kind of like discouraging to a point, because, as you said, the value of a single resource unit is degraded so exponentially as you evolve the character.
That's every free-to-play game in existence, though.
I know.
When I did the math, though, when you priced everything in babies, and I'm sure, by the way, they are going to come out with classic and supers that you can get. I'm sure they're going to give you more than just babies at some point, because the units are going to become silly. But when I did the math on, hey, how many babies do I need to get a classic? How many babies do I need to get a super? When you price all of that out, I was actually surprised that the price to evolve a character, let's say from a baby with 0 copies to, let's say, a super, and it does vary by rarity. So we can look at the store. The store is very interesting. I'm sure we can talk about that a little bit. But if you use store prices to anchor this, which is likely a ceiling, for an epic character, it's only about $100 to max them out to 3-star right now. And when you think about, 25, 27 characters, you're, thinking about in totality, when you combine the common, the rares, and the epics, maybe $200 worth of spend to get to 2 stars. And this 3-star evolution they just came out with, maybe $2,000 in character spend. I don't know. Does that seem like enough depth?
It's light. I mean, I think it's actually only 1,000 copies to get to the new Evo they just released. Because you only need one
something in
Ultra to play as that character, right? You don't need all 10. So like drop a 0 off the spend depth that we calculated before, Phil. I mean, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think right now the total depth for characters in the game is like $2,200, which puts them significantly lower in spend depth than, Brawl Stars, Clash Royale, any of those games. If they added another Evo, then they would 10x that in theory.
Yeah, 2,000 to 22,000.
Yeah, basically. It's light. Supercell likes to be conservative with monetization. They generally don't like to charge more than, a couple $100 to max a character. That's just sort of their style.
Yeah, I would agree. I was not incentivized to make purchases, to be honest.
I think it's important just to take a moment and talk about like why you would evolve a character. And so the reason you would take a character from like, baby to 2-star to 3-star, all the different stars, is because it unlocks a different ability that the character has. It does not improve stats. It may improve stats of an ability, but it's about getting those abilities. And I think there's just another like weird part of this game where like the babies are a part of this game's marketing. Like it's a fun part of the IP is that there are these baby versions. But you have a baby version for a very brief amount of time, like 2 seconds, you're going to interact with the cute baby characters. And the rest of it is like really where the exponential curve takes off. Like you're going to spend a lot of time with like the seniors, like it's going to be like a senior housing home at some points. The store, I think it's worth talking about this. So I was critical of their spend velocity when I initially wrote the piece. So remember, you can get those chests from the end of round gameplay. But the only other way to really rip into this in terms of spend, when you don't count about the gem pass or like the squad journey, which is their account level progression system, is the store. And there's only 8 characters that you can buy, character copies that you can buy at any one time. And I was like, oh my god, this is going to limit spend velocity to whatever the sum is of all of the characters in that store for that single day. And this little Finnish company, they put in the frickin' refresh deals for 2,500 gold in the update. You can see it right here on the screen, which essentially is an inverse loot box.
Oh, you wrote about it. You wrote about it.
I wrote about it, but I didn't even
complain. Your big piece.
This is my like
now
big
you have
argument.
to delete it.
I have to. I put an update. I put an update of like, oh man, why don't they just implement this inverse loot box? I've tried to convince like every HD company to do this. Just let me refresh the store. It's like an X-ray pack, and they fucking did it. So you can go in, you can spend.
They did it. They did it before you published.
It's interesting. The refreshes increase in price. So if you do your first refresh, it's 2,500, and then it's 4,000 gold when you do your next one. So there's, but you can sit there.
God damn it! You have a lot of gold. You have 850,000.
Yes, I have spent a lot of money.
50,000 gold.
Yeah, I'm in, man.
Holy moly,
Matthew! I'm getting them at 250 million by myself. That's how it's
I wish I could help you. I have to play with my fake Canada account, and I can't. I don't have a credit card with the right address. I really wanted to buy the battle pass because I'm just like, progression's so slow without the battle pass. I want to buy everything in the store, but I can't. Everything's so cheap too. Like everything in the game is so cheap. The consumables are so cheap. I just don't have the gold, and I can't buy it. It's like they're like
Matt,
penny
that's
stocks.
a great point. Actually, now that you mention it, you're playing it from your Canadian account, and so the other reason for going global so quick is that the metrics are going to be quite different because there's probably a lot of players who are playing with the accounts from other countries where they can't spend but they can't play, and so when you go global, that issue disappears. Again, I don't know what the percentage is, but feels like that's considerable percentage of players.
Interesting. Yeah, it's hard to know how many cheaters there are like me out there, but I definitely want to spend. I would be happy to increase their KPI in the soft launch.
Yeah. Interesting. Like, what about the battle pass? Like, was Phil, of course, spent on the battle pass. In this game, I kind of like didn't spend on the battle pass. Like, I love this. I play this all the time, but it just doesn't feel enticing. It's a good offer, but it's just more of consumable resources rather than something unique that you get from Fortnite. Like, it's not like, oh, I need this battle pass. This is so cool. It's just like, whatever. It's just more shit.
Do you feel like you're progressing as fast as you want in the main progression?
I'm enjoying it. I never feel that I lose because somebody paid to win. I know how you can pay to win, but I don't know if somebody opened up those those chests without paying and so forth. So it's not like I can blame them for paying and winning that way rather than it just wasn't my luck. So I think this game has the great balance between if I win, it was because I'm fucking best. And if I lose, it was just bad luck. That is the optimal.
There's a lot of
optimal
that.
balancing. Yeah, and it's definitely balanced through the bots because when I get the shit kicked out of me, like when I'm the ninth like just eliminated in the beginning with 2 Mavises just ravaged by somebody with barbarians and a chicken. Like I start a next match, and in that next match, it's clearly like bot driven and it knows what's up and it just, carries me to number 1. So I feel that balancing. I feel them kind of like making it good for killing me so early with the real PvP opponents.
Do you think they'll continue to use bots that heavily when they, have enough player concurrency to fill players instead? Just for balancing purposes?
Of course they will.
Yeah.
Of course they will. This is the new hot trend. I can imagine any mobile game without bots these days. I would not recommend that to anyone who's making a PvP game in mobile. You should always have bots. You got to get win rates high. We know win rates get you attention. I think the danger here is like you start to lose player trust. Who's a bot, who's not? I think ethically we have to mark bots. That's a separate conversation, but I think this is going to spread like wildfire. This is like the new fake ad.
Oh man.
Yeah. No.
I mean, Snap's been doing this for a while.
That's not going anywhere either.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, should we talk about economy and finally, just economy? I think that's the last thing.
That sounds great. Well, I think we should talk about cannibalization to close it out too, because there's been a lot of comparisons to Brawl Stars.
That's a good point. I see people playing Brawl Stars a lot. Anecdotally, shown this game to kids who are Brawl Stars addicts, and they weren't that interested. But I think it's because this game hasn't been marketed yet so big that it's kind of like, they're like, I'll play Brawl Stars, and if I need to play something bigger, I'll play on my PC or my console. But in the short run, I think this naturally cannibalizes the game because the attention goes to this one, and there's only a finite number of games that you can play, and the progression in the beginning is so fast, and everybody is going to be playing this, so of course you'll be playing this, and through that it becomes the main game. The question is, like, when does that stabilize? Because we saw the same thing with Clash Royale. When it came out, it cannibalized Clash of Clans, and then it kind of balanced off during that year as the game declined in size and the players went back to Clash of Clans. So I think we'll see the same type of a thing happening with this game, where in the beginning we'll see clear cannibalization with Brawl Stars, but over time, the players who have made the progress in Brawl Stars will start returning to that game as the main game because they have just so much invested into it. And this is the story of almost any free-to-play franchise, and that's why they're unbeatable.
Baloney from top to bottom. So here would be my pushback against this. So we just saw AFK Journey go out. No cannibalization with AFK Arena, which blew my mind when we look at active users.
That blows my mind too. That makes no sense to me.
Just absolutely zero. Absolutely zero. Just crazy to me. We've seen zero. In fact, AFK Arena might actually be up, which is mind-blowing. Like, this might be picking up some organics. It's a mistake in traffic. So that's crazy to me. Now, on the other side of the aisle, you have Genshin and Star Rail, which has been nearly 100% cannibalization. Mm-hmm. I would argue that this game fits into the AFK Arena category. And the reason I think that is for the same reasons that people made the same mistake when Battle Royale came out. We asked this question about whether or not it was a mode. We've had that question for Squad Busters too. Is this just a mode that could have appeared in Brawl Stars? In fact, in many ways it did, right? Because they had Gem Hunt, they have Death Valley, they have a lot of the mechanics you see here have existed in these other games. And that was the same case for Battle Royale. And ultimately, a lot of people lost that bet because Battle Royale became its own genre. And again, it goes back to the sandbox, right? It created its own structured sandbox that was separate and different from the sandboxes next to it. And ultimately, like, that was a new paradigm. And arena shooters could not mirror that paradigm, and they are a very small part of the market, and battle royales are a very large part of the market right now. So I think this game has a potential to do its own thing. I don't think it's competing for the same pool of players. I expect that Brawl Stars is going to be fine. I think this is measurable. Let's look at downloads for both of these games as they come out. If CPIs are up, if there's a download fall, we should see it in Brawl Stars. But it's a big ocean out there. There's a lot of room for a lot of PvP games. I don't think this is going to be an issue.
Yeah, I think I generally agree with that. I think there will be some degree of cannibalization, but the games are quite, even though they're both action games, they're quite different. Reading comments from Supercell players who like Brawl Stars, a lot of them are pretty somewhat negative on the combat depth of the game. particularly the Brawl Stars players. One said, it's like this game was meant to be played by dopamine stimulated 8-year-olds. So, I mean, it's like, which I find insulting because I love the game.
That sounds great. That sounds marketable.
It's scratching a different itch. I think there may be some cannibalization, but I would bet that it would be additive. Again, just because it is substantially different, and hopefully it's expanding their market to different types of players.
Interesting points of view. What else do we want to cover? We got 5 minutes to go.
We never talked about the boost mechanic. Like the core mechanic is so cool. Like you move and you boost, and you're just constantly riding this boost button. You feel powerful all the time. You kind of feel like you're always powered up. You're just sort of riding this button. Are there other games that have this mechanic? I found it to be pretty novel and just really dopamine triggering for me. What do you guys think?
I mean, we've had like sprint mechanics like in first-person shooters. I would say like I don't know if I'm as excited as you are about it. I used to work with like a professional Battlefield player. We hired him at DICE, and he actually remapped the keys so that sprint was just the normal walk button, which is like a secret tip. Like you should do that for all your first-person shooters. It makes you so much better. But like it's kind of horrifying because you get into these again. It always goes back to the hunt where like some of your characters die, and then you're like scrambling to hit the turbo button fast enough as it's depleting, and your enemies are like catching up on you and killing you. I agree with you though. Like it's accessible. It's accessible, right? It's this one button. Like go forward or do not go forward. Sprint or do not sprint. And everything else is contextual. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Dota on like 2x speed. You can resolve an entire build and battle match in 4 minutes because you're sprinting the entire time. It's really novel to me and really interesting. I don't know if they had the sprint button in all the previous versions, but yeah, I was really impressed by that. Keeps me playing it.
I'd be interested to see, because the turbo button also doubles as that attack speed boost. I'd love to see them tweak that up a little bit more and increase it. Because we were talking about like combat resolution takes a long time. I think that's another issue here is that, there's combat readability, which we talked about, hard to know what's going on, who's winning, who's not, do I retreat, do I not retreat? The other thing that it takes is just time to resolve, especially at the end game. You have so many units in combat with one another. It'd be interesting to see them tweak that a little bit more so that combat will resolve quicker. Because there's also opportunity cost, which I found to be one of the biggest barriers to combat, which is like, I could be farming. I could be doing something else. I could be growing rather than shrinking. And all I'm going to get out of this combat is maybe a key. Because you get, when you bust another player, you get a key, which gives you a powerful character. I'd like to see a little bit more rewards there. Yeah, I'm on team accessibility though. Most accessible game I think they've created.
I agree. I agree on that. I think we all agree that this is going to be a major success. The question is, Matt is the most negative of us. I think I'm the most positive. Phil falls somewhere in the middle of just how big of a success this game is going to be. But it's been a pleasure playing this multiple times a day. I love it. I'm a squad buster, 100%. So
no social though. Let's see if they can't.
No social, none of that. No leaderboards.
Have you ever tried an emote?
Yeah, no, but I think there's so many things that are still left that have not been added.
Live ops events are bad.
Live ops is not there.
Just take for match 3.
Yeah,
episode race, Volcano. What are you waiting for, Supercell? Let's go. Open that playbook up.
Exactly. So there's ton of low hanging fruits, if you will, and very clear paths for this game to develop. We've seen only one update, and even that one update was pretty good already. That came in less than a month after the launch, so I bet they have a goddamn chest full of features and stuff that they will be throwing at the players as soon as this launches. But super interesting strategy. We'll be following how this cannibalizes, how many downloads they're going to get during the first month, how widely this game is going to be accepted, and then most importantly, what is the retention going to be like? Is it what the demo said, or is it more towards like the best retention we've ever seen type of a category? So very curious stuff. Yeah. On that note, if you haven't read The Deconstruction, written by solopreneur Phillip Black, you should, from Game Economist, you should check it out. And gentlemen, Matt, thank you for jumping in on the podcast. Phil, as always, thank you for being Game Economist.
Thanks for having us.
And thanks for the Deconstruction. Guys. The Deconstruction was, by the way, marvelous. There were a few people writing it. You wrote it first, and it was goddamn great. So if you haven't read it, it's pure magic.
Matthew
So,
helped edit it, and Laura helped edit as well, and one mysterious person too.
Don't be humble.
it takes a village to write one deconstruction. We know it.
No, it's
Fair
great. Great work.
Thank you everybody for listening. Read the deconstruction if you're on the blog. It's right below. If you're not on the blog, go to deconstructofoffun.com. Go to blog. You'll find the deconstruction there. It is a great read, and this was discussion based on Phil's amazing deconstruction. On that note, thank you very much, and bye-bye.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.